Hey. Yeah? You ever wonder why we're here? It's one of life's great mysteries, isn't it?
Baby, I can see your halo. You know you're my saving grace.
Hey Cortana, what time is my lunch with Tony today?
You have lunch with Tony at CJ's from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m.
Hello and welcome to Law & Order. This week's topic, Halo Infinite, and why this makes sense. So, it's been 2 weeks since Microsoft revealed that iconic Halo Infinite trailer at E3, and seeing it got me thinking, how? I mean, I'm as excited as the next guy, but I hope this isn't just a retcon of the armor for the sake of retcon. You know, I hope there's an in-law explanation. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at ways that they could do it in law. This video being my most solid theory, if that makes sense. Obviously, no theory is solid, otherwise it wouldn't be a theory. But yeah, this is how I think that Chief gets a relatively classic style of armor back. So I hope you enjoy. So at the end of Halo 5, we saw Cortana, after seemingly having some difficulty tracking down the Infinity, get on board the ship's bridge and control the ship to some extent. But how? Well, ultimately, despite being more of a hard light kind of being now, much like the Prometheans, Cortana still carries some traits of her AI capabilities, likely due to her interactions with the domain. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to butcher the definition of the domain in a minute, but essentially this is my very basic understanding of how it works. It's an incredibly complicated forerunner construct, the domain, to the point of it being almost sentient. Like, there's people online wondering how the domain wasn't destroyed by the Halo activation in the Forerunner Flood War. So we're talking about that level of sentience in what seems to be a very, very, very expansive dictionary. But essentially how the domain works is, to the best of my understanding, the domain works as a kind of library where if you have access to it, you can recall any piece of information ever, as long as you know about it. So as long as at some point in your life you've learnt this thing, you can call it back through the domain. Which, like I say, is a very bad and simple explanation about what this incredibly complicated life form is. But essentially, due to Cortana's interactions with Infinity in Halo 4, throughout the ship's bridge and projecting herself onto the bridge, she is able to do that, if that makes sense, because of her being inside the domain. But you're probably wondering how this is all relevant to Chief's armor. Well, as we've seen, she can do this to the most advanced starship that the UNSC has ever made. So what can she do with a tiny piece of Mjolnir armor? You know, it's insane. She has the knowledge of how to interface with every single variation of Mjolnir that Chief has ever worn in their time together. We're talking Mark 5, we're talking Mark 6, we're even talking about the most technologically advanced version of Mjolnir, Gen 2. So, basically, whatever Chief wears, he's fucked. Now, I forget where the source is from, but in a video, HiddenXperia, I'll link to the channel, stated that Fred has had an interaction in the Gen 2 armor with an AI, which led to very catastrophic consequences. Like there's talk, I think, of them being able to shut down the armor, which as a Spartan is worrying, because yes, you're strong, but you're not capable to hold up like tons worth of metal. And there's even talk of AIs being able to just commandeer the armor with you inside it, so they can use the armor for whatever purpose they want. If Chief were to go up against Cortana in his current armor, or any armor that we've seen him in prior, it would be catastrophic, to say the least. Especially with, say, the rest of Blue Team and Fire Team Osiris on board, they're all wearing the same Gen 2 armor, regardless of the permulation. It's the same software, if that makes sense. Suddenly, 8 Spartans become 8 weapons for the Cratered, which isn't great, to say the least. To combat this, we need technology from a time before Cortana, so stuff that she hasn't had the opportunity to interface with and get to know. So really, we need anything from 2050 prior. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the UNSC Spirit of Fire. Missing from 2531, the UNSC Spirit of Fire carries technology which, in terms of Cortana, is like ancient. It's like a floating dinosaur in space, the Spirit of Fire. Cortana also has no experience on how a ship this age works. The only equivalent being a completely different class of ship, the Pillar of Autumn. So there's some leeway there for Cortana to get a workaround, but with the Autumn being a Haklon class carrier, I think, or a cruiser, I'm not sure. It's a Haklon class ship anyway, and the Spirit of Fire being a colonial vessel, they're very different in their makeup, even though they're from a similar era. So there's wiggle room there to work it into a story, if that's the route they're going. The Spirit of Fire also houses Spartan Red Team. Now, Red Team are a Spartan team from around the Harvest era. The Spartan 2s, like John and Fred and Kelly and Linda, the rest of them. But something unique about them is that they never made the transition to Mark V due to the fact that the Spirit of Fire went missing. Therefore, the Spirit of Fire must have some kind of Mjolnir Mark IV making equipment to help deal with the Spartans on board, whether this is just to mend pieces of equipment or manufacture new pieces like we see with Doug in Halo Wars 2. So if the Chief and the rest of Infinity's crew were to somehow rendezvous with the Spirit of Fire, chances are they'd be able to inform the Spirit of Fire about what's happened with Cortana. The likelihood is that Isabel or Anders, if they've rescued her from the Halo, would be able to then inform them that, oh, maybe she doesn't work backwards compatibility, so she can't go back into something she hasn't had experience with. Now, I have an idea on how the story of Halo Infinite could work, but I'll save it for a different video, just so that this video isn't overcrowded. So after providing the Spartans on board the Infinity with Mark IV armor, the Spirit of Fire could join up with the Infinity to take the fight to Cortana on Zeta Halo, which we could see at some point during Halo 6. This explains the mixed art style that we saw in the Halo Infinite trailer at E3. You know, we had Marines wearing armor from a time way before Reach, but they're carrying battle rifles from the Infinity's armory. We also see Chief, yes, he's wearing a classic style armor, but the helmet is of the Gen 2 style. So it's definitely a new version of an old style, if that makes sense. This has to be Mark IV. So it explains the mixture there between the two, and it also explains why that we see Chief with a Warthog from the Infinity. You know, this isn't a Warthog that was present in the Harvest campaign. It's one of 2058 or later. So there we have it. It's a rough explanation, but it's one that will get fleshed out more when I do my "This is the story of Halo 6" kind of video, where I explain how I think the details of Halo Infinite could go down. Let me know what you think of this idea. To me, it makes sense in lore that they would have to travel to the Spirit of Fire to get an old version of a suit to fight Cortana. It'd be essentially like if Cortana tried to access the Mark IV suit, it'd be like putting an Xbox One disc into an Xbox 360 and expecting it to work. It just wouldn't. And I also think that it makes sense outside of a lore perspective, because as everybody knows, unfortunately Halo Wars 2 didn't do that well in sales. I absolutely adored the game, many people within the Halo community did, but because it wasn't a mainline game, it didn't get the same love. The time of RTSs has gone, unfortunately, from the mainstream of games. You know, it's all about first person and battle royale versions now. as much as I love the game and the story, it makes sense that maybe they wouldn't do a Halo Wars 3, which is sad. So this avenue gets us a rounding off to the Halo Wars 2 story and a rounding off to the Reclaimer saga. But that is just my theory. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like a favourite if you enjoyed this. It's a new style of video that I'm hoping to carry on. Maybe the next one might be another Halo one, but I've got a Pokemon one coming up about evolution, and there's one about Super Mario, and I can't remember what it is, but that one's actually really good. It's been a while since I've looked at my list, but it's actually a really interesting theory that I want to present. So, yeah, I've been the Randomizer Woman. You've been watching Law & Order. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.